Hello. What we have here is called a demand curve. So here's a business, and what this shows is the higher your price, the less you're likely to sell. And as you lower your price, you'd expect to sell more. Now, this bottom red line is the sort of demand line that would face you if you were a commodity. In other words, there's very little to distinguish you from the other people in your sector. And there's two things about it. One, it's quite low, so it means you're charging low prices to sell any given quantity. And the other thing is it's quite flat. It's called elastic in economic terms, or price responsive. And what that means is that if you were to put your prices up, say 10%, you might lose 11, 12% of volume. So in other words, you lose more volume than you gain on the price. So you're trapped really. You can't really put your prices up, because if you do, you lose actual revenue. If you put your prices down, then in theory, you would gain extra volume. So that might increase your revenue. But the problem is that because you're a commodity, you're in the same boat as all the other commodities out there, which means you've all squeezed each other's margins down anyway, which means that if you lower your price, you'll probably end up making a loss because your margins are so low to start with. And secondly, even if you didn't, all that will happen is all the others will put their prices down as well. And you trigger off a price war and everyone's worse off. So you're sort of stuck really when you've got this sort of demand line. However, if you can differentiate yourself by having what's called a unique perceived benefit, something about you that makes you stand out from the crowd, even if it's only something that you explain better than the others in terms of what you do, but some element of quality, something that makes your proposition better and more attractive than your competitors, then suddenly you remove the competition and you become this type of demand line here. And this is called differentiated, and UPB stands for unique perceived benefit. And now what happens is you can charge more for any given volume, or you could charge more, say here, where you're getting a higher price and you're selling more volume. So basically you can be better off in both regards. And also what you do is, because you take away the competition, you're less price sensitive. So your demand line will be steeper. And what that means is you could be putting your prices up. And so you might put your price up, say 10%, and maybe lose 4 or 5% by volume, which actually means you'd be making more revenue and you'd be making more profit as well, because your costs would be lower. So differentiating yourself from your erstwhile competition means that instead of having this sort of demand line, you have this sort of demand line. Now that can make and does make a huge difference, because if you look here, if your price was 100, your volume was 1,000, your revenue would be 100,000. If your cost of goods sold, your variable cost was 60, then your gross profit would be 40. Take off your overheads, say they're 25,000. That might include what you pay yourself, or some of it might include wages, salaries, rent, rates, etc. You'd end up with a net profit of 15,000. If you could increase your price by 10% to 110 and your volume by 10% by, say, being there, then that'll do three things actually. It increases your price, which increases your revenue. It increases your volume, which increases your revenue. And it also increases your gross margin, because you'd be making more profit on everything you sell, because your costs won't have changed, just your price has gone up. So you would take your gross margin up by 10% generally, as near as damn it. So the gross margin would go from 40, i.e. the cost of goods 60, gross margin 40, it would go to 45, because cost of goods sold would now be 55% of the sales price. The gross margin would be 45%. So those three things, higher price by 10%, higher volume by 10%, and higher gross margin by 10%, would mean that if you calculate the numbers through, you'd still have the same overheads, and your net profit would double from 15,000 to 30,000, simply because of those three lots of 10% improvements. Well, actually 2 lots of 10% improvements, which is all stemming from one thing. And the one thing is creating your unique perceived benefit. Now, just a note here, your unique perceived benefit has to address a need or a want for your ideal target market. So you need to know your ideal target customer or client first, and then you need to devise your unique perceived benefit to give them what they want. What is it? What problem or issue have they got that they need a solution to? So there you have it. Identify your target market as closely and as nearly as possible, and then develop a unique perceived benefit, something they can see you as providing, which is superior to the others. And you can take yourself away from being a commodity into being a differentiated standalone market leader, and you could double your bottom line. And you could do that very quickly. Basically, all that really needs to do is to sit down for, I don't know, a few hours and actually work out who is your ideal customer, and then how could you develop a proposition that gives them what they want better than the others do. I hope you found that interesting and useful. Thanks very much for watching.